I'm Art W. Sorgatz. I'm from Waterville, Minnesota. I was born in 2833 on a farm in Waterville Township. And I entered service when I was 20 years old. And what more you want? How far should I go?
What did your parents do?
Oh, they farmed. And I wanted Dad to buy more land and I was going to farm too, but after going through the Depression, he didn't want to stick his neck out. So then I started working out and got married when I was 19 and 6 months later I was in service.
And did you enlist or were you
drafted? I was drafted, and then I enlisted for another year and joined Airborne.
So which branch did you serve the first
Army.
year? And what was your unit?
When I went after I joined Airborne, then they shipped me down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I was in the 11th Airborne.
So when you were drafted, and you first went to training?
I was only in a few days. I went to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and at Fort Sheridan, after I don't know, a week or so, I joined Airborne. So I never went to a different unit. I went from there to Fort Campbell.
So you were drafted into the Army, but were able to immediately transfer?
Yeah, after I enlisted for another year. Reason I enlisted for another year, really, because I was getting $15 a month more, and that paid for the house rent back home. Doesn't sound realistic, but that's the way it was back then.
So what was training like? Well,
Airborne, regular Army, you had 8 weeks of basic. Airborne, you had 16 weeks of basic. And you double-timed. Whenever you left the barracks, you double-timed. You never walked. You went to the mess hall, you double-timed. You went to a movie, you double-timed. You went to church, you double-timed. So you did that for 16 weeks. And then from there, you went to Fort Benning, Georgia for jump school.
Can you tell me about jump school?
Oh, well, see, after our 16 weeks of basic, we were supposed to go home on leave. Well, we got done with 16 weeks of basic, and they said, no, you ain't going home on leave. You're going to pull KP and detail for a month. And then after the first of the year, we got done about the end of November. And after first of the year, you were going to go directly down to Fort Benning. Well, that didn't sit very good with us. See, a company is about 220 men. So we all started talking, and we had to do a PT test where I guess what PT would be like physical training, but you had to go push-ups and all that kind of stuff. And if you didn't pass that, they'd kick you out of Airborne. So we all started talking, and we decided we're going to fail the test. So out of 220 men, 200 men failed the test. So they kicked us out of Airborne, and we went home on leave. That was my duration of being in Airborne. But it still bothers me today that I wish I would never have done that. I wish I would have followed through. But you were young.
When did you get transferred over to Korea?
I left the States in 16th of December, 54. And we landed in Yokohama on New Year's Day, or docked at New Year's Day. And then from there we went to Incheon, Korea. And then we hopped on a train and went down to Busan. Incheon doesn't have no ship docking. You anchored out in the bay, and then they took you in by boat. Pusan had regular ship docking, but I don't know why we had to go way up there, but we did. I went over on the U.S. General Pope. They said it was the worst storm they ever seen. We had 50-foot waves. When the bow would go down into the water, the props of the ship would come out of the water, and the whole ship would shudder. And our bow was cracking 1 inch an hour, and they was welding her up the way she was cracking. When she got back to the States, they put her in dry dock, and I never did hear anything about the Pope after that. So I don't know if they fixed it up or what happened. But anyway, it was rough. But that whole ship would just shudder when them props would come out of the water. And we had 3,500 troops on that ship.
And then where were you based?
A few miles northeast of Pusan. Our barracks, or whatever you want to call them, was about 50 yards from the Sea of Japan.
And what did your duties look like?
Well, we were truck drivers, and but then we pulled a guard duty at the port, or at the pier, and that was about what we done. We hauled merchandise. I don't remember even no more what we hauled at that time. But I was only there for 5 months, because then our whole unit, trucks and all, were shipped over to Yokohama, Japan, and I was there about a year. When I was in Korea, then we drove deuce and a halves, and when I got to Japan, then we drove semis.
What did a typical day look like when you were in Korea?
That's 50 some years ago. I don't know. You got up in the morning and we either had some trucking to do, or else we had guard duty down at the pier. That was about it. Oh, I should tell you, when I first got there, I was assigned to a headquarters company in Pusan. We had 3 warehouses, 2 of paper, of forms, and one warehouse full of liquor. And they supplied whole South Korea with liquor out of that warehouse. We had parties every Friday night for 10-cent drinks.
So what kind of things did you do for fun?
Not much. There wasn't much to do, because we was out there. Well, there was I don't know if it was a town or what, but there was people living right close by. It was all compacted, hut on top of hut. So more or less, not much.
Can you paint me a picture? What did South Korea look like just following the war?
Well, see, Pusan never got really damaged that much. It was all shacks, one right tight together. I asked, they came out with a book, what Korea looked like before and after, and at our chapter we had a couple of guys that went back there on that. You can go back. The South Korean government has tours. And I asked him if they still had huts. He says no. And I asked him if they still worked out in the rice paddies by hand. He says no, that's all machinery. And I asked him if they had any honey wagons. No, he said he never seen one.
And can you describe what the honey wagon is?
It's human feces. They use that to put on the rice paddies.
Are there any stories or experiences that stand out to you from that time?
No, like in South Korea, they had, if somebody died along the road, if the family didn't pick him up, he laid there. Because anybody that would pick him up, other than family, had to support the family. So he more or less, he could have laid there 3-4 days. You just drove around him. And finally somebody had picked him up. I don't know who. But that was one of their customs.
What kind of friendships or camaraderie did you form?
Well, yeah, you did. You had, picked out individuals that you associated with. But not, I never had, I guess I didn't really have any close friendships. I had one guy from Hastings, but then I lost his address after I got home, and I never did get in touch with him. So it's something you did every day, and you had companionship, but nothing that was real close.
What impacted you the most from your time of serving there?
In Korea, you got to see how everybody else lives. People don't. People are used to living like we do. They don't understand how in other parts of the world how people live different. I mean, we talk about poverty here. We don't have poverty, not according to the poverty that was there at that time.
What was the date that you transferred from Korea to Japan?
End of May '54. Our whole unit went, equipment, trucks, everything.
And then what did your time in Japan look like?
It was good. We went to the 47th Transportation Company, and we did a lot of trucking there. Even at that time, we hauled a lot of damaged trucks and stuff back to the pier, which was shipped. I imagine it was shipped back to back here. I don't know where it went, but Japan was kind of fun because a lot of your Japanese at that time had bicycles. And if we'd see a guy going down the road in the same direction we were, we'd turn our ignition off. And about the time we got alongside of him, we'd turn the ignition back on, and the truck would backfire. So that went on for a while until we started blowing mufflers. Well, they couldn't figure out why we were doing that. They finally figured out, well, that was the end of that. So we created our own fun or atmosphere.
And when did you rotate home?
I got discharged as 2nd of June, as soon as I got back. My 3 years were up.
What have you done since?
Well, before I went into service, I worked for Ben Edwards, right west Mankato, a mink ranch. And then I come back, and I got a job on a dairy farm for, 6 months. And then I got a job. I went to Ottawa, Minnesota, and Chucky Schmidt mink farm. And from there I went to construction, Highland Construction. And from there I went to a feed mill in Waterville. And in 1960 and in 67 I bought the company. And in 98 I retired. I was there 38 years.
How has your time in the military impacted your feelings towards military service?
Well, if I would have been single at the time, and if I could have re-upped and stayed overseas, I would have. Overseas service was a lot better than stateside.
What did it look like? What was the contrast?
Well, overseas, it wasn't the spit and polish it was back home. You had more, it was more lenient. Then you had more fun. When I was in Japan, I was in 55 and 56. I was amazed at their trains and their transportation. They had these electric trains. You know, your car manufacturers, you know, say, well, from 0 to 60 in so many seconds. Well, that's the way their trains were, because most people stood up, and you had a handheld, you know, deal up there, and you better hang on, because when that train took off, it was just like a bullet, and it stopped the same way. And they claimed they went 100 miles an hour. They was further ahead than we were at that time already, because we never had trains that went that fast that I'm aware of.
So what kind of life lessons do you feel like you learned through your time of service?
Well, one thing, you appreciate life more. You appreciate what you have, because there's a lot of people in this world that don't have nothing.
Having served there, what do you think of U.S.-Korea relations today?
They came from beaten down to nothing, and now they came up to be the 10th most economical country in the world, and that tells you something. And as far as I'm concerned, the people between Korea appreciates us more than we do of Korea. But it was a good experience. I've always said, you know, at that time you had the draft. They should bring that draft back. If nothing else, even for 1 year, that the men would serve. If nothing else, you would learn discipline and how to take orders. Because in today's youth, they don't know how to do that.
Is there any piece of wisdom or message that you would like to pass on to younger generations?
I don't know. I suppose there is. One thing I found out, when you're young, you got to keep your nose clean, because that follows you all your life. If you goof up when you're young, that's going to be in your background all the way through. Enjoy yourself, but still, you know, keep your nose clean.